folks who called and couldn't get through because we had.
No, the messages left.
Those are people we're getting.
We're losing.
Good evening, everybody. Once again, this is Eric Wupser with the City of Sandusky. Please hang in there. We're going to get started very shortly in the Teletown Hall. Just a reminder, if you have a question to ask tonight of any of our speakers, please press 0 and we'll connect you to an operator.
We had just a couple of technical problems getting started, and so a couple of folks might be joining us just a little bit later after they called the first time and weren't able to get in.
Hope everybody's staying dry out there with the rain. And for those of you tuning in now, this is, once again, this is Eric Wupser, Sandusky City Manager, here with Commission President Dennis Murray, Commissioner Naomi Twine, and Chief John Orzak. We're going to be starting in just a moment. We're waiting for some more folks to log in. And remember, if you have a question to ask us tonight at the Teletown Hall, please press 0 and you will be connected to an operator who can question in. We're really looking forward to the conversation with the community tonight about how we begin together to move Sandusky forward. I think that it's going to be a great dialogue, and we're really excited to be able to do this Teletown Hall because it's going to allow us to reach a lot more of our residents and really engage those residents in how we do move Sandusky forward. And remember, if you do have a question to ask tonight, it's 0, and we'll connect you to an operator who will help you get your question answered. Tonight's dialogue will be moderated by Commission President Dennis Murray. Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. And first of all, I want to say thank you to all of you for participating tonight. We know everyone's busy. Hopefully more folks are at home and able to be on this call due to the rainy weather. But thank you again. In tonight's call, the first Teletown Hall with the City of Sandusky is to give you some basic information about our current financial situation in Sandusky, and then to open up the phones to take your questions. There are 4 of us here tonight. I am new Sandusky City Manager Eric Wupser. Joining me is City Commission President Dennis Murray, City Commissioner Naomi Twine, and our Police Chief John Orzak. And by way of an introduction to me, I'm a Sandusky native. I grew up here, and this is my hometown. I went away to college and for work, but my wife and I, who's also from the area, always planned to return here to raise our children and to give back to this community. And it was such a wonderful opportunity earlier this summer to be invited back to serve my hometown as the city manager and to serve alongside folks like Chief Orzak and a wonderful commission, including Commissioner Twine and Commission President Murray, as well as our other great commissioners. But when I accepted the job, I knew the city finances were in a difficult place and that many cuts had already been made. But I also know that Sandusky has a rich history and amazing assets, and that if we're able to find the resources to invest in this community, there is so much that we can do together to improve our residents' quality of life and improve our city services. But we are facing serious challenges. Currently, Sandusky faces a potential budget deficit of $500,000 in 2015 and again in 2016. And this deficit comes after we've already cut nearly 1/3 of our workforce over the last 10 years. There are city services we're no longer able to provide, such as street repair, and there's nowhere left to cut without severely impacting our service. And for example, in 2006, we were able to do over 7,000 linear feet of asphalt to repair our city roads. 7 years later, in 2013, we were only able to do just 1,000 feet of linear asphalt. That's a dramatic reduction in our ability to maintain our infrastructure. In addition to that, EMS and fire response times are both up, as are the number of calls to police. So clearly, something had to be done. And many residents made proposals for how we could address Sandusky's financial crisis, but there was no consensus about the best course of action on how to move forward. Some wanted to raise the income tax. Some thought increasing the admissions tax by up to 3% was best. Fortunately, we were able to bring together stakeholders from across the city, from citizen groups like Rebuild Sandusky to Cedar Fair, from our labor unions, and from the city itself, to create and craft a proposed solution that we believe will best serve Sanduskians over the long term. That agreed-upon solution is to ask voters to approve a 0.25% increase in our local income tax and increase our admissions tax by 1%. This dual approach will generate over $2.8 million, over half of which will come directly from the employees and visitors to Cedar Point. If this issue is successful, proceeds will be used to provide police and fire services, to improve and maintain our streets, sidewalks, parks, and trees, and to help us attract and retain local jobs. Without the passage of this issue, we face further cuts. Fire Station 7 could close, and there will likely be additional layoffs, including police officers, as well as the continued lack of investments in our streets, parks, sidewalks, and trees. Further cuts would require drastic actions that could impact EMS response time, street repair, and other critical services. Before I open the phones to take questions, I'd ask you to keep a couple things in mind about this proposal. Retirement benefits will not be taxed, so retirees will not pay this income tax. Admissions tax is only paid by those attending our local entertainment attractions, 98% of which are attendees going to Cedar Point, with the revenues overwhelmingly coming from people who live outside of this region. Tonight in this teletown hall, we want to both inform you and hear from our residents so we can address your questions. I'm looking forward to your questions and to hearing from our residents. And just a reminder, if you have a question tonight, please press 0 and you will be connected to an operator who will help your question to get answered. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. I'm Dennis Murray. I'm the Commission President, and here to answer your questions tonight along with me is Commissioner Naomi Twine, Police Chief Orzak, and of course City Manager Eric Wupser. And we'll have our first question, and this, I guess it's from Ms. Barden. And Ms. Barden, you're on the line. Well, we think you're on the line, Ms. Barden.
Yes. Hello.
Please. Good evening, Ms. Barden. Would you tell us what's on your mind this evening? What's your question, ma'am?
Why Cedar Fair hires so many foreigners and not the children of Sandusky?
Well, that is an important question. I think they actually have hired a lot of local people. All of my children have worked there, and so have I. So that question might be better directed at Cedar Point, but thank you for that question, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just add to that really briefly, on top of Commission President Murray, I also worked at Cedar Point as a teenager, as did most of my friends and family, and have heard directly from the general manager of Cedar Point, Jason McClure, that they work to hire as many locals as possible, and oftentimes when they hire outside, it's because they can't find locals to fill those positions, and they're actually looking at scheduling software that would allow local residents to work more flexible schedules. And so I think you'll see Cedar Fair with a strong commitment to hiring locally, in addition to the several thousand people from this area that they employ annually.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we'll take a question from Dale. Dale, tell us what your question is this evening.
My question is, why didn't they go for a sales tax where everybody that comes into the city, including living in the city, buys something, spends money, and sales tax is then created for the city of Sandusky instead of putting it on the homeowner's responsibility and the working bees back? Because with Sandusky being 70% rental and most of those people not even having an income, you're knocking 70% of the people right out of the ratio here.
Well, let me take a stab at answering that, Dale, and let me tell you, in part, we as a city have to work within the framework that the Ohio General Assembly gives us. So we are not allowed to impose a a sales tax, period. That's not an option that is available to us. The only options that are available to us are the hotel tax, which we already charge at the maximum rate, the admissions tax, the income tax, which can only be increased by a vote of the population, and then a real estate tax. And we really do not rely to any real extent on real estate taxes to fund city government. And that also would have to be approved by the voters. So what the commission has opted for after we interacted with a group of folks who were ready to put an admissions tax that was really too large on the ballot, would go from 3% to 6%. It would be one of the highest in the country. And so what we did is we ended up with a compromise where we would increase the admissions tax and the income tax. They're tied together. And I realize that there are some people, senior citizens, who are really unable to absorb even a 0.25% income tax, but it's important to know that those folks are not subject to the income tax at all, not the existing 1% or the increase. If you're on retirement or pension, Social Security, any kind of interest income, that is completely free of the income tax and will remain that way. So thank you for your question, sir. We have another question from Al. And Al, would you let us know what's on your mind?
Yes. My question was the grants and the monies from the government that they've given for the infrastructure of the city, for roads and bridges and that, and also the monies that they grant to supplement the police and that for equipment and that. Is this money allocated into this finances for the city to offset this deficit that we have?
Hi, Al. This is Chief Orzak. The grants that we apply for are specific for usually equipment, so they can't be used for any other purpose other than what the grant allows. So we wouldn't be able to do anything in addition to that. And if we weren't able to get the grants, we wouldn't have the equipment that we would need to properly staff our officers and keep them safe. For example, we just received a grant for tasers that without a grant from the government, we wouldn't be able to get those tasers to allow our officers to carry them and be safe and be proactive. So all of those grants that we're getting for equipment, we wouldn't be able to get otherwise without them. We just don't have the finances available to do that.
And I would just build, this is Eric Whoopser again, build on what Chief Orzak said as it relates to roads and bridges, as well as safety grants, is that there is rarely a commission meeting that goes by where we're not either asking the commission to accept or to apply for grants from the state and federal government. And we chase down as much of those resources as possible. And as you look at projects that are underway in the community or about to be underway, whether that's the First Street project, the Columbus Avenue project, the Camp Street overpass, or underpass, I should say, those are projects that are leveraging state and federal funds. But all of those projects require a local match, and for the last 2 years, due to budget constraints, we don't have that local match. And so what passing an issue like this would do would provide a specific source of funding so that our local dollars can leverage more state and federal dollars. There is rarely a case in this day and age where there are grants from any level of government that don't require some commitment or investment from the local community.
Marcy, you have a question? Want to go ahead and let us know what that is?
Yeah. Thank you for having this meeting and allowing us to talk, since I'm not usually able to attend the commission meetings. I'm 53 years old. I've spent most of my life born, bred here, went to school at universities, came back, and I'm working in my hometown. I bought my grandfather's house 20 years ago, and now I find that living in Sandusky, it would be cheaper if I moved out to Perkins Township. Perkins Township does not pay income tax like we do. We now pay the second highest percentage in this county, property tax-wise, for schools, of all the schools in the area. Now, I don't have any problem necessarily with an income tax. It's the fact that I think that everybody needs to be good stewards with it. I guess what I'm saying is with the property values falling in the city, The fact that I live in a good neighborhood and I walk out the door and I now hear gunshots, which is the first thing in the last few years, tell me why I should continue to live in Sandusky. If the taxes are so high in terms of living here already, I understand wanting to major things that you guys are doing, but add that and the school levy together, and it's getting too expensive for the homeowner, not the renter, the homeowner to live in Sandusky.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for all of the years you've lived in Sandusky and for your investment here. We're of course just talking about the income tax and the admissions tax issues tonight, and that's the only issue that we as a city government can control. I can tell you that we have done a comparative study of the relative cost of local governments, and I think you'd be surprised to find out that Sandusky is actually the cheapest. On a per-person basis, Sandusky is the lowest cost government by a considerable margin, and part of that is because of the admissions tax that none of the other communities have, but I'm looking at a bar chart that will be part of the live town halls and will eventually find its way onto the campaign website right now. I've just finished drafting this that shows just how much cheaper Sandusky is than places like Margaretta Township, City of Huron, and Huron Township. So we have really worked hard to keep costs down. We've actually cut a third of our workforce over the last 10 years. We have cut actual spending in real inflation-adjusted dollars by well over 25% in the last couple of years. We are as lean as we can be, and we're too lean at this point. To address the concern that you had about some of the situation in the neighborhoods, whether it's the gunshots or whether it's some of the properties surrounding you that are depressing property values, that's exactly part of what we're hoping to be able to address if the voters approve this. One of the things that Manager Eric Woopser, has laid out is exactly how these monies are going to be spent to deal with beefing up law enforcement and EMS service so that we can get out there more and be more proactive, add back to the narcotics division, add back to the detective division, and most importantly, we need to be able to get to code enforcement. Code enforcement isn't the most exciting thing that city government does, but in the end, it's one of the very most important things that it does. You know, we have a code. It's a community covenant that we all agree to when we live here. We've got to maintain our properties in a certain way, and when our neighbors don't maintain their properties, it causes property values to decrease. It makes homeowners uncertain about making additional investments, and it actually has a dramatic impact on crime in the communities because that's where some of the elements that we don't want in the community end up living. So I hope that the voters pass this and that we're able to provide those additional services that is going to make your continued investment in Sandusky worthwhile. We have a question from Larry. Is Larry texted in or is he on the line? Do we know?
Let's go to Tom.
We'll go to Tom and then we'll get to Larry's question here. I'm not certain. Tom, you're on the line. You have a question? You have to click on Tom. Oh, I'm sorry. We have a texted question from Larry. Excuse me. Larry wants to know what happened to the dedicated license fee from 15 years ago that was supposed to be dedicated to road repair, and how will we know that this money is spent efficiently? Mr. Woopser, are you able to field that question?
We do still have the dedicated license fee for street repair, and that fund goes directly to funding our streets department and a lot of the work that they do, filling potholes as well as repaving streets and providing local match. The challenge is the amount of our needs is much greater than the amount that resource provides. And ultimately, a significant portion of this income tax will be restricted towards rebuilding roads and supplementing just that license fees. Certainly we're not the only community in this situation. Vermillion, for example, also in Erie County, just added a 0.5% income tax increase specifically to rebuild roads. And so, again, we're looking to supplement those license fees with these resources, which we know is critical to stabilizing our infrastructure. As far as how you can trust that we will spend this money the way we say we will or effectively. We've got a very strong finance committee in Sandusky made up of residents, representatives of our institutions and our largest businesses. And the chair of that finance committee, Al Nichols, has pledged that they will play a formal role in auditing or looking at how we spend these new and specific resources. Not only are they spent efficiently, but that they're delivering on the promise we're making to improve safety forces, to rebuild our streets, to create jobs, to tackle blight and housing issues in the community.
Okay, we have a question from Tom, and sorry to keep you waiting there, Tom. Tom, go ahead with your question, please.
All right, thanks a lot. Hey, my question is, what are you guys doing to make the downtown area more attractive for businesses to move in to then supplement this tax that you guys are wanting to impose?
Let me take an initial give an initial response to that, and then I turn it over to Mr. Wubser for a more definitive answer. But one of the things that I notice, given that I work downtown and spend a lot of time downtown, has been the increased investment activity that we're seeing already. We're seeing a lot of buildings being renovated and purchased. Some of it's more obvious, some of it's less obvious, but if you take a look at the activity down there, it's building on itself. And so I think that's a good thing, and ultimately that's the only way we as a community will be able to grow out of the situation that we're in. We have to attract more people to our community. We have to attract more people paying income taxes in our community. We have to make sure that visitors are comfortable coming to our community, so the admissions tax increases eventually. But I believe very fervently that we need to make a bit of an investment now so that we can begin to grow the city. And if we don't make that investment now, we won't be able to grow the city. I think you can see that in some of our neighborhoods. You can see what the problems are from a lack of code enforcement. There was a reference to gunshots being heard recently, and that's something that if we increase the police presence, we'll be able to better address. So, Mr. Wubser, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, so my background to a great deal before coming to back to Sandusky this past summer was in economic and community development. And I worked in a neighborhood in Cleveland called Ohio City that as that neighborhood's downtown came back, it revitalized not only that downtown and created jobs, but it started to revitalize the surrounding residential neighborhoods. So I know how important it is for this community to work on revitalizing that downtown, to create jobs. In fact, a portion of the increased admissions tax will be used for economic development and to create more jobs in this community. And that's important because I've been meeting with those new small downtown business owners and investors, folks like Ka from Small City Tap House, folks like the Avalones, folks like Chris Romick and Mary Mishler, who bought a 24,000 square foot building in downtown Sandusky and have revitalized that, working with Citizens Bank, our local community bank, to invest in providing housing on the upper floors and storefronts on the lower floors. But they've had a lot of challenges in finding those loans and in making that project work. The city can be a better partner to those investors and also really put out the welcome mat for additional investors and entrepreneurs so that as we revitalize that downtown, we're not only revitalizing a downtown for visitors, but that's everybody in Sandusky's downtown, and the vitality that gets created there supports all of our investments.
I just want a reminder to folks who are listening. Actually, this is kind of exciting. This is Sandusky's first teletown hall, and we normally will get 30, 40, sometimes as many as 50 people who will show up for a town hall. But we've had several hundred folks call in tonight, and it's really I'm excited about this. It's an interesting way to do it, but we can't get your question unless you dial 0 first, and you'll be connected with an operator who can bring you into the waiting list and let us know what your question is. But before we turn to the next question, I want to ask you a question because this technology allows us to be a little interactive here. So we'd like to know if you think Sandusky is moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. If you think Sandusky is moving in the right direction, it's not perfect yet, but if we're moving in the right direction, press 1. If you think Sandusky is moving in the wrong direction, please press 2. Again, that question is, if you think Sandusky is moving in the right direction or the wrong direction. If it's the right direction overall, 1, and if it's the wrong direction, 2. and we'll give a little while for people to answer that question while we take the next question. And Camille has a question. Camille, would you let us know what your question is? You're on the line.
Yes, I'm an auto worker that has been forced out of the area to work in Cleveland, and I pay a 2% tax in that city that I worked in. How am I expected to pay a higher tax rate in the city I live in?
Well, Camille, let me just, I'm sorry, this is Ms. Hecker. Let me take a initial answer to that. Every community has to find its own revenues to support the services that it's providing. The city of you work in Cleveland, I think you indicated, and the city of Cleveland has, through a series of votes over the years, the residents there have decided that it's worth it to them to impose a 2% tax. We're only talking about going to a 1.25% tax. And at that rate, we would still be one of the very lowest in the state. The average in the state is 1.7%. And with the cuts that have been made in Columbus to our budget, we've lost over $2 million from our budget in just the last 3 years from what has happened down in Columbus with the elimination of the estate tax and the cuts in local government funds. That's had a direct impact on our community. And so for us to be able to continue to maintain streets and safety forces and all the things that we do, we think that makes sense. And so I hope you'll be supportive of the tax when you go to the polls this fall. We have a question from Camille. Camille, you're on the line.
Hi. My question is in regards to Cedar Fair, and how do they feel about adding on the admission tax to their fees? My concern is that sometimes we think it's not a problem to, add on more taxes and more taxes, but in the long run, might that decrease their actual numbers of admissions and also their revenue? I know their parking fees increase and things like that, and sometimes people get fed up with that. And as the city of Sandusky, then we would be suffering from the end result of that too, if their revenue decreased from that. And so I just wondered what their opinion was on that. And one other thing about renters paying property taxes, this debate has come up many times, is that my feeling is that everyone pays property taxes, because if you are a renter or if you're renting a home, those amounts should be included in what you're charging, and you can't call them property taxes. But when your fees go up, or when your costs go up, then your rent that you charge goes up. So you shouldn't be losing money if your property taxes go up. Eventually, you're going to be raising your rent. So I don't think we can sit by and just blame everything on and say, oh, renters don't have to pay, because they're going to be paying their share too, So
Hi, Camille. This is Commissioner Twine. Thank you for your question. I think the important thing to remember is that this income tax that we're seeking, we have collaborated with Cedar Fair. So they are our business partners. We are working together to, and remember, it's only 0.25% that we're seeking, and Cedar Point is seeking to put a 1% admissions tax increase. So this is a collaborative effort. Cedar Fair, of course, we can't speak for them, but with them working with us, the city, to come up with this solution as to how we all can move forward together, I think those are the important things to remember.
And I would add to that, from some of the conversations that I've had with the folks as Cedar Fair, they very much want to see Sandusky thrive because they feel that that's important to their long-term business interests, and that's why they are very supportive of this. They've let all their employees know they're supportive of it, and they've made public statements indicating their support. The Register ran an article, a letter from the manager, Jason McClure, indicating strong support for this levy and City of Sandusky. So thank you for your question. We have a question now from Keith. Keith, what's on your mind?
Hi. Actually, I had two mini questions, basically. The first was I mentioned, I heard you guys mention that some of these funds and these increases are going to go to trees and parks. I would like it if you could elaborate on that. And the second part is, are there any plans on trying to attract different types of businesses, because, you know, that's a really good way to, you know, increase the income tax?
I think maybe the first part of that question is one that Mr. Wupser is pretty well equipped to answer.
Sure. So, Keith, first of all, thank you so much for calling. And to the first part of your question, the income tax is completely restricted to three types of uses. And those three types of uses that were chosen specifically because we'd heard from the community through several mechanisms that it was most important. And so one of those uses is to help improve our safety forces. Another is to focus on housing issues and to remove blighted properties to the city, which ultimately lead to more safety issues. And then the third and final piece was for infrastructure, and included in that infrastructure is rebuilding our streets, our sidewalks, our parks, as well as our trees. So infrastructure, safety, and housing and eliminating blight are what those resources from the income tax will leverage. In addition to that, and to start to answer your second question, is we absolutely are working to attract businesses to the city, and we'll finally have resources that help us to attract those businesses. For example, of the new admissions tax, the 1% that will be leveraged, 50% of that increase in the admissions tax will go directly to help support businesses to create jobs. And so we'll add to our existing programs, which have become underfunded over the years, in fact have no new revenue going into those programs, like revolving loan funds, or also have flexible dollars for things like infrastructure that help support the investment of private businesses to create jobs in the city.
I just want to give an update on the answers to the question that we received. Of the question that we asked, is Sandusky moving in the right direction? 83% of you who responded indicated yes, and 17% indicated no. So thank you for that feedback. I know that's very valued by Commissioner Twine and I and the rest of us who are really trying hard to, we're all working together very well these days and move the city in the right direction. We have a question from Molly. Molly, if you're on the line, would you let us know what your question is, please?
Hi. We live in a neighborhood that has 3 foreclosed houses in it, and this is kind of about the blighted properties and housings in Sandusky. We've been trying to get a property that's condemned next to us through the land bank, and I want you to speak more about the foreclosed houses in Sandusky. We pay our property taxes, but we have been sitting next to this property for about 5 years now, and then we have 2 newer foreclosures, and it's very disheartening to live next to such a blighted property. Thank you.
Molly, thank you for calling. Before we respond to your call, I want to remind the many callers on the line waiting to ask their question that if you do have a question, to get your question asked and answered, you need to hit 0. You'll be connected with an operator then who will get you in the queue. But if you don't hit 0, we don't get an indication here at the table that you're on the line. So we need you to provide us with your questions. I want to turn the question over to Chief Orszag in just a second, Molly, to talk about how code enforcement fits in with the mission of the police department, and the extent he feels comfortable talking about the fire department as well. I'm sure it'll address that. But I want to tell you just generally about the foreclosures. You know, the local banks are not the ones, by and large, who are foreclosing. They don't want the properties in their names. What's happening is we and so many other cities across Ohio and the country have been the victims of out-of-state banks who delay the process mercilessly for their own benefit, and they just turn these properties in foreclosure instead of being responsible and working with the homeowners as local institutions do. That is almost certainly the situation with the properties that you have in foreclosure. If you talk to the local judges, they'll tell you the same thing. The ones that are in foreclosure forever are just a handful of out-of-state banks, and they can tell you exactly who they are. So it's a problem that's a little bit beyond our immediate ability to address, but once the property does get turned over to the land bank, then Erie County and Sandusky have been working very effectively to repurpose those properties. But Chief, I wonder if you might just talk a little bit about the impact on your forces of the lack of code enforcement lately, and what some of these properties that are in limbo have been doing to make your job more difficult.
Yeah, the properties that are vacant are usually being used by folks that are squatting or taking copper or things out of the houses. They board it up, and then we have to go there. Some of them are in very bad shape and puts our officers and firefighters at risk trying to check those buildings or the houses. But the land bank has been working very good. Amanda Myers and Commissioner Farrar have been instrumental in getting those properties from the land bank and getting the houses demolished or getting those properties back on the books as far as the mow-to-own programs and things like that. Also, in addition, we were notified recently at a commission meeting that the Erie County Land Bank, in partnership with the Sandusky, are going to be working. They just received quite a substantial grant, so they're going to be working in partnership over the next few years and really keep those funds going and keep proactive and moving the land bank, the demolition of vacant and blighted property down. As the police chief, I fully support the code enforcement aspect of this because we're dealing with all of those issues and not having teeth behind it in order to make our citizens safer, getting folks out there that are living in places that they shouldn't be, and getting those abandoned properties taken care of. So the code enforcement, Mr. Murray's absolutely correct, is vital and critical to both the police department and fire department, as I've spoken with Chief Dagnan about this. So we really are supportive of that code enforcement aspect of it as we move forward here.
And I just add to that, Chief, one of the things the Commission did, I think the meeting before last, was we approved an application, a grant application that would allow us to do a survey of all the properties in town. And that is, that almost all that money was paid for by one of the Sandusky Erie County Foundation, with the city providing a very small match. And what that is going to allow us to do is to then access the U.S. Treasury's hardest hit fund, is what it's called, and that will allow us to access, we hope, yet another couple $100,000 of demolition dollars here in the city of Sandusky. So we're going to continue to look for opportunities anytime we can. Chris has a question. Chris, you're on the line. Let us know what you're thinking about tonight.
Yes, hi. I'd like to address a comment that you guys have made a couple times this evening involving how the tax increase money would be spent. I saw the ballot language, and it said about 80% of the money is going to be placed into the general fund, and I was kind of curious why the City Commission chose to do it that way. I know Mr. Whoopser mentioned that in Vermillion they passed a road tax increase, but they specified that was just for roads. And I guess I'm concerned, too, because even though this year we have a commission that's been very proactive and hardworking to try to get this done, next year we're going to have a commission election, and we could have up to 4 new commissioners. And as we've seen in the past, every time we have new commissioners, priorities get changed. We've had 2 city managers get fired. So that's why I guess I'm a little concerned. So how would you address that to make sure that if we pass this money is going to go the way that you say it's going to go?
Let me answer the first part of your question. I know Commissioner Twine wants to answer the other part of it. But as to the ballot language that you're looking at and the specific language that the Commission approved, given existing ordinances, part of that money needs to go into the permanent improvement fund, which is for things like purchasing trucks, and we've taken a look at our fleet of trucks and cars. They're in pretty sad shape, and some of it actually goes to a couple other dedicated sources, which I'm not immediately remembering, but I think it was some police and fire retirement funds, and that was a result of the fund statewide being underfunded years ago. But I believe it's still, as you indicated, I think it's 85% of the money goes into the general fund. And if I were you, I wouldn't trust me either. But you make a good point about how do we do this long term. And Commissioner Twine, you've had some experience with the Finance Committee. But what's your understanding of what they're doing?
Well, our Finance Committee, they understand we are designating these monies to our police and fire, roads, making sure that we're...
But it's advisory. The commission can overturn them.
I'm sorry?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know I was still on the line.
Sure.
But my concern is the Finance Committee is just an advisory committee. The commission has the final say in all the money that gets spent by the city.
Just really quickly, Chris, and then to turn it back over to Commissioner Twine, if you actually read the ballot language, which our attorneys has told us is restricted, those money may pass to the general fund, but they have to be used specifically for the expressly stated uses in the ballot language, which includes infrastructure, safety, and the elimination of blight from the community. So those are the only. Now, while there's flexibility in how we accomplish those goals, we do not have the ability to spend the money, the general fund aspects of that money, on anything other than those expressly stated issues.
Anything to add to what your prior answer, Commissioner?
Well, no, I think Eric has answered the question.
And I would simply add that, it was a year ago or so that the Finance Committee stood up and said, what are you doing as a city to balance this budget? Are you out of your minds? Is anybody paying attention? And they got a lot of attention for doing that. So I think, we've had a history of some really strong people serving on that particular committee. We're very grateful for that. They don't do it for any compensation. And the fact of the matter is as what Mr. Webster indicated, I forgot about that qualification. It does have to be spent the way it's indicated in the legislation. So let's ask another question. A lot of people answered the first question. So the second question is, which service is most important to you for the future of the city of Sandusky? So if you believe that police and fire services, and before you answer any of the questions, let me read. There are 5 choices. So before you hit the button, let me tell you. Number 1, police and fire, if you think that's the most important. 2, maintaining and repairing city streets and sidewalks. Number 3, code enforcement. Number 4, economic development. And if you think all services are equally important, hit 5. Let me give you those choices again. So the question is, which service is most important to the future of Sandusky, obviously in your opinion? 1, police and fire. 2, maintaining and repairing city streets and sidewalks. 3, code enforcement. 4, economic development. Or 5, if you think all those services are equally important. So while we're waiting for those, let me remind folks who are on the line to hit 0 if you have a question that you want to ask, so that we know that you're waiting in line and have a question that needs to be answered. So, John, you have a question?
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, John. What's your question?
Well, I'll let you know first off, and I'll address my question here after I get done letting you know that I gave you a false name simply because of my fear of retaliation of my employer of what I have to say. And that is that I don't feel as though the businesses, those people owning businesses in Sandusky and in Perkins have maintained any kind of increase in the income of those people that work here to even inch out or squeeze out another penny from the income people that work here. And for the Ford workers that went up to Cleveland, I fail to see where it's fair for this board or anybody else to come up with the only solution is to increase income taxes. That's my feeling on it. And 1, I need to know what the name of the ballot is so I can vote no?
Well, we'll know the number of the ballot issue here in a couple of days. It's not out just yet, but let me answer the first part of your question, and if the other folks at the table want to chip in, let me know. Nationwide, we have experienced now for almost the last 40 years a stagnation in the wages of workers. The average American has really been treading water. Part of what we are facing is a concentration of wealth in billionaires, and it's a real problem for the country. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. But what we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what are we going to do as a community to try and position ourselves better? As a result of the cuts that we've taken from the state, I think the answer that I think is right, and I'm hopeful that the majority of citizens will agree with this, is that we need to invest in ourselves. Because what we find time and time again is that people move to where they want to live, and employers move to where there are people who are able to do the jobs that they want done. And what we want to do is be a city of first choice for people. We want to have the roads and the parks and the law enforcement and the economic development that will make people say, hey, I really want to live in that city. A lot like what Mr. Wobser did in his last position as I've forgotten what your title now was, Mr. Wobser in Ohio City. Director of Ohio City. Really, so we want to bring people into our community to help us pay the admissions tax and the income tax and the property taxes that support the school. So that's a big part of why I'm supportive of this issue. And Mr. Wobser, do you have anything you care to add to that, or Commissioner Twine?
John, this is Commissioner Twine. I think I kind of hear also in your question, why are we raising the income tax and when basically wages have not been increased? I think one thing you need to keep in mind and hope that you will consider this is the state income taxes are quite down. Also, as Commissioner Murray indicated, we kind of have to take responsibility for what we do in our own community. A 0.25% increase is we're still lower than surrounding communities. So I know a lot of people have this mindset that they don't want any tax increase, but I think that we are at a point that as we move forward, I think people are looking for us to provide the leadership that's needed to indicate what exactly this increased fund is going to do. So I think the important thing to remember is that, we're not just trying to increase the taxes just for the sake of increase. We have specific reasons such as providing the infrastructure we need here in this community to draw economic development that will help also increase what's happening in this community. So I think I kind of hear your complaint is that, we want to raise taxes, but I think that we have a method and a reason, and we're still trying to maintain our communication and the fact that, yes, this might be difficult for some people to add to their budget, but I think in the long run what we do is, try to make those small incremental increases, so as we increase those things, then we can draw economic development to the community.
Okay, I want to remind folks who are still on the line that if you want to ask a question, you need to press 0 so that you can get your question recognized or to get into the queue so we know you're on the line and you've got a question you want to ask. But before we get to the next question, let me just share with you the results of the people who voted on the last question that we asked about which service is most important to the future of Sandusky. Actually, 63% of you said all of them. The next highest group was police and fire at 22%, and then economic development, code enforcement, maintaining and repairing city streets and sidewalks rounded out the rest of the answers. So thank you for that feedback. And we have a question from Harriet. Harriet, you're on the line. What's your question?
Yes.
Hello.
Okay, I want to know why everything in Sandusky is geared for Cedar Point. They fixed the roads that you fix are the ones that the people come from Cedar Point travel, and the restaurants go up on the taxes, on the price of the food. Why do the people of Sandusky have to Well, we're the ones that be inconvenienced with the traffic and everything. We can't go out to Walmart because traffic is so bad. We can't go to Myers because traffic is so bad. Why do they go up on prices with at the restaurants and nothing's geared for the people of the ones that I was born and raised in Sandusky?
Hi, Harriet. This is Commissioner Twine. Thank you.
Hi.
For your question. Yeah, at times it can be a little frustrating with the traffic and all. But a little bit earlier in the conversation we talked about, my first job was Cedar Point. A lot of people in this room, their first job was Cedar Point. Cedar Point provides quite a bit of industry and employment for this community. The fact that they're willing to give back on this ballot issue, I think is very important. I'm not sure if some people don't realize how important Cedar Point is to the community. Yes, there are some inconveniences at times, but those tourists coming into the community, they help spend money, they help add to the economic development to this area, they help add to the tax base, and they help add to the city's funds. So, yes, there's a slight, inconvenience at times to having all those people in the community, but also we need to look at those people helping us to survive and helping us to do those things that we need to do to increase, the desire for people to come here. Our hope is that as we move forward, that more people will come here and decide to live here. They will decide to open businesses here. So Cedar Point is not the only thing that we kind of rely on, but we're hoping that as we move forward, that as more people see the beauty of our community, that they will decide to open their businesses here and live here.
It's a little bit odd having Cedar Point is our only New York Stock Exchange listed company in Sandusky, and very, very few communities other than the Big Four in Ohio can make that claim. So it is unusual. Cedar Point actually, though, it does contribute over $1.8 million in the admissions tax that none of our neighbors are able to impose. Cedar Point pays 98% of that tax. They also are the largest employer in the area, and they really have kind of a surprising fact that they contribute to keeping down our water rates and our sewer rates, because they're the single biggest purchaser and allows us to spread those costs over a much larger volume. And finally, they're one of the biggest supporters, if not the biggest supporter, I believe, of the Sandusky City Schools. So, yeah, we do end up being focused on the big corporation that's here. It sometimes can be a little bit of an inconvenience, but all in all, it's been a real benefit to the city's budget. Let's take the next question. Kay, I think you have a question. Kay, you're on the line. Let us know what's on your mind.
Hello. I don't understand when you're saying you want to bring people into this community to start businesses and move here. People want to move out because of all the violence.
Hi, Kay. This is Commissioner Twine. Thank you for your question. I guess I don't really see all the violence. I think we have a great police chief here. He has done more to create relationships with the people in this community. He's making sure that his officers are also in a position to create relationships. Yes, every community has these pockets of events that causes us to have to address those things. But I think that Chief Orszag, he'll comment a little bit more. But yes, we want people to move here. One thing that this income tax increase will help us to provide the services that we need to our citizens in this community, making sure that our police department is properly staffed, our fire department is properly staffed. so they can continue those relationships within the community. And the more that we have those safety forces in place doing the things that need to be done, we can address those small pockets of violence that do pop up. But I think, I guess I tend to think that, yes, we do have some issues, but I don't see it as something that will prevent or hinder people from looking at us as a place to come to move to or plant their businesses. And I think Chief Orszag will probably have some more to comment on that.
Yeah, thanks for your kind comments, Commissioner Twine. To kind of piggyback on that, we've been out in the community doing as much proactive community events as possible, meeting with the citizens. We started different programs, Coffee with a Cop. We have a liaison program and different initiatives. And the success of the Sandusky Police Department is dependent on the success and the cooperation and collaborations we have with the community and local law enforcement, judges, prosecutors, and all of those that play a key role into what we're trying to accomplish to make our community safe. The violence that takes place, our department investigates very thoroughly and takes it very seriously. So if we have an event that is violent or takes place, we will leave no stone unturned in trying to get those persons or people or persons in custody and in the county jail as quickly as possible. Also, we've had a significant reduction in staffing levels over the course of the last 10 years. We went from 56 full-time officers down to 45. We had 29 reserves at one time, which enabled us to have two-man cars. We're down to 5 reserves right now because of budget constraints, and we just need a little help getting us up to where we can be proactive and target enforce, and that's kind of what we're gearing towards, is there's drugs and violence mixed together, and trying to incorporate some additional officers to get out in those areas and be visible. Right now we're strapped. Our guys are doing and gals are doing as good a job as possible, but I can assure you that we will continue to do that with the resources you give us. We just need a little help with that.
Thank you, Chief. Folks, we're just about out of time. We can take just one more question, but I wanted to let you know that if you're waiting online and you wanted to ask a question and you didn't get a chance, if you just stay on the line, and when we finish, you'll be connected to voicemail and you'll have a chance to leave your comment or question. But we're going to give the final question to Ed. Ed, you're on the line. Let us know what's on your mind.
Hi there. I'm here, resident of the city, and the fact is, I hear people complain about the tourists. I see a tourist, I say, thank you for coming to town. We appreciate your business, and they all say thank you. It's unbelievable the response you get from people. And like I said, without them, we're dead in the water anyway. You know that. But that's what it's all about. Thank a tourist. Man, take a tourist to lunch. I don't care.
Hey, Ed.
We need the tourists.
Ed, this is Eric, and I couldn't agree with that statement more. Certainly Sandusky has faced some economic challenges over the last several decades, but so has every city in the Midwest or the Northeast, particularly industrial cities. And we're so fortunate to have the natural resources of Sandusky Bay, to have tourist attractions like Cedar Point, to have an emerging downtown, so that we have something that, in addition to working to stabilize manufacturing, can also create jobs. And remember, those tourists, in addition to supporting restaurants, are also supporting things like construction jobs. Cedar Point, for example, is doing a $65 million renovation of Hotel Breakers. They're using majority local contractors. It was just announced last week that a $7 million Holiday Inn Suites was going to be built on Cedar Point Drive. Again, a significant number of construction jobs. So Sandusky's in that fortunate position, and if we can work to build on our strengths, we can continue to provide good jobs in tourism, but also in construction, and we still have a very strong manufacturing base in this community, but we need the city to have the resources to be a good partner, to provide critical basic services, and to be able to invest in those who are investing in this community.
Well, I want to thank everyone who participated this evening. We had several hundred people participate in the call at various points over the hour or so. And your questions and comments are very important to the administration, all the commissioners, We're going to continue with sort of normal or regular town halls, but I like this. I think we should do this again. What do you think, Naomi?
Well, this was interesting. This is our first time doing this, and I think it's a good thing. I guess I like the face-to-face interaction a little bit better, but this is a way for us to communicate with people and them communicate with us as to what their thoughts, ideas, and questions and concerns are. So.
Well, I think we're in 2014, so we're going to try another form of communication, and it won't be either or; it'll be both and. So, just want to let folks know that if you'd like any further information, you can always visit the Sandusky website at www.ci.sandusky.oh.us, where you'll find out all sorts of things. Thank you all for participating. Good night.
Thank you.